Okay, we're going to move on now as part of the transfer rumours to the next Manchester United boss. Now, Thomas Frank has been linked, as have a number of others. It was Southgate last week. It was Thomas Frank this week. Before we get your thoughts on this, Shaka, there was a bit of an exclusive on ESPN FC yesterday that all the papers in the United Kingdom have picked up on. It's from our very own Mark Ogden. Now, Mark sat down for a chat with James Ollie, with Rob Dawson as well. And the exclusive was to do with a guy who was at Bournemouth and is now the manager of Wolves, Gary O'Neill, and a potential move to Old Trafford, but not necessarily as a manager. Let's hear more from the boys.
I've been told that Gary O'Neill is a manager that United are keen to speak to. From what I've been told, nobody involved knows what exactly the role is, whether it's a manager role or a coaching role, because United are looking at not only assessing their options as a manager, but assessing whether they need to rebuild their coaching setup. So Gary O'Neill obviously done really well at Wolves this season. He's only 40 years old, and I've been told that within the game, he's really rated as a guy that's going places. Now, I don't know enough about Gary O'Neill to know whether that's true or not, but he has a lot of admirers in the game, and United are keen to talk to him. And whether it leads to him becoming the United manager, I doubt. But let's be honest, if you look over the years of the great managers that have been successful, I'm not for this moment saying that Gary O'Neill is going to be the next big thing. Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Jose Mourinho, Thomas Tuchel, they've all kind of made their mark in their early 40s in terms of set their reputation. There's no point looking at a manager who's in his early 50s, maybe Erik ten Hag. If you're in your late 30s, early 40s, that's when managers start to catch people's attention. Now, maybe Gary O'Neill is the next big thing, and maybe that's what United are assessing, whether this guy who's did really well at Bournemouth last year and has done really well at Wolves, maybe he's the next big thing, maybe he's not.
This intrigues me. I think it's a really good scoop there from Mark Ogden. There's no doubt that, Shaka, they'll be looking everywhere for potential new bosses. I just wonder, given Sir Dave Brailsford's background with Sky and Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in, I just wonder if they might try something different there. And that would tie in kind of a head coach, like in an American model where you've got your GM, you've got your head coach or something like that. They may go for a kind of overseer of everything, and then someone who just takes the players and has nothing to do with the transfers. So talk to me about Gary O'Neill perhaps having a role, and maybe United being interested in someone like Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I find it a little bit confusing, and maybe it's the lack of information and around what that role may be. But if I'm Gary O'Neill, and let me say, I know Gary O'Neill. I played with Gary O'Neill at Portsmouth. As it happens, and that same Portsmouth team was Richard Hughes, who's just joined the backroom staff or about to join the backroom staff at Liverpool, and Eddie Howe, of course, manager at Newcastle United. All incredibly talented, incredibly intelligent young players at the time. That's clearly what I thought, and that's kind of how their coaching careers have progressed. So there's no real surprise to Gary O'Neill's rise. Of course, you're never quite certain who will make a good manager. But Gary O'Neill is highly intellectual, and so it didn't surprise me at all just to see him progress as he has. That being said, given his career at Bournemouth, where I thought he did an incredible job, and in my opinion was let go unfairly, right? Did what was asked of him, but somehow that wasn't enough. Found himself in as manager of Wolves, and continues to do an incredible job. Why do you go to a club, even a much bigger club, such as Manchester United, to be part of a backroom staff? I just don't see that. And then the question also is, who is the manager? Maybe you go to be part of a backroom staff for a Sir Alex Ferguson or Jose Mourinho or Carlo Ancelotti, but you don't leave a club in Wolves to be part of Erik ten Hag's backroom staff, or, with the greatest of respect, Roberto De Zerbi, whose Brighton is a point above you currently in the Premier League table, or to Thomas Frank, whose Brentford is what 14 points behind you in the Premier League table, 14 or 15 points. Memory fails me there. I don't understand that. So until there's more clarity around what's being asked of Gary O'Neill, it makes absolutely no sense to me. And to your point, okay, I get it. Ineos coming and are rethinking the kind of coaching structure at Manchester United. But until we know what that coaching structure looks like, again, it's kind of hard to comment on or to make sense of some of the speculation.
I just have this. It's so hard because there's so little info about what kind of structure. Whether there's an overseer, whether there's a godfather in a throne that sits there and there's some sort of managerial committee, I just don't know how that works. And it's not a case of Gary O'Neill perhaps working for X, Y, or Z. You've got Thomas Frank coming in as well. These are all managers in their own right. So is it the pool of Manchester United that an assistant with them is better than a first-team manager's job at another Premier League club? I find that kind of hard to believe.
Yeah,
so until we get
I'm with you. If you're the boss, if you're the manager,
that's different.
It's really hard to then accept a role as having to answer to somebody, as not being the one on the sidelines, as not being the one making the final decision, even at a bigger club. That doesn't make an awful lot of sense to me.